It's Wednesday in Simpsonville, South Carolina, and we're picking up part 3 of the Christmas story found in Luke chapter 2, beginning at verse 1. In the very first verse it says, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus, and that was to take a census, and for each person to go back to the city of their heritage. In the case of Joseph, he was to take Mary back to Bethlehem. Bethlehem means the city of bread. It was a prophecy foretold that that's where the Messiah would be born. You'll find that in the book of Micah. Interesting, because the city is known as the city of bread, and bread becomes a very significant issue in the life of Jesus. When we look at the word bread, there's the things that we think about, such as, I am the bread of life. Well, as a matter of fact, it makes you think about all of the I ams that Jesus said in the scriptures. He said, I am the good shepherd, I am the light of the world, I am the gate, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am living water. And we could go on for quite a while about the I ams, but I want to come back to a couple of points in this Christmas story. First of all, I want you to see that God is in control of all things. He created a desire in Caesar Augustus to take a census at the very time. Now, some people would say that was just a coincidence. That was just a circumstance. And how interesting that is that that would just happen at that time. But I want you to know God's in control. Am I concerned about ISIS? Of course I'm concerned about ISIS. But do I believe for a moment that God's not in control? No, I don't believe that for a moment. If he can cause Caesar Augustus to decide after years, when there's been no census, to take a census, and to make that census not in the city where you're living now, but in the city in which your ancestry began, the city of David, the city of Bethlehem, the city of bread. And Jesus said in Matthew 26:26, as he took the bread, was celebrating the Passover, he said, this is my body, which is given for you. The bread. In John 6:33 it says, for the bread of God is that which comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world. You see, Jesus was dealing with those that certainly understood all about Moses and all about the manna and the bread, and they gave Moses all of the credit for having bread out of heaven, and asked Jesus what he would give. And he said, you're mistaken, number one. Moses didn't provide the bread. My Father in heaven provided the bread. But he listened to what he says in John 6:35. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. I am the bread of life, verse 48. In verse 51 he says, I am the living bread that came down out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread also, which I shall give for the life of the world, is my flesh. Probably your church is going to have a communion service in the next few days, perhaps between now and Christmas, or maybe on Christmas Eve. Remember, when you take that cup, it's representative of the blood that was shed for you, for your salvation. When you take that little wafer or that broken cracker, when you take that bread, remember he said, this is my body which is broken for you. Yes, he is the bread of life. Without him, you can do nothing. But with him, you can do all things. Nothing is impossible with God. So as we come to this Christmas season, and we think about this first part of Luke chapter 2, where it says that on the perfect time, in the perfect place in Bethlehem, as prophesied by Micah, Jesus was born. He gave birth to a son and laid him in a manger because there was no room in the inn. Is there room in your heart for him? I hope so. And I hope as you take that wafer in your church service, I hope as you take that bread, you remember that he is the bread of life. He came down out of heaven, and if anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. The bread also which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. And he died on the cross for you and for me. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.